A simple function is fantastic. It can do all kinds of things for us. However, what it can do for our application is limited by its inability to interact with the data in our application. One way that we can allow a function to interact with the data within the application is to pass that data into the function when we call the function. In order to accomplish that, we need to tell the PHP preprocessor that this function is expecting this value. And we do that by including a variable name within the parentheses in the definition of the function. The example here shows a function being created. Keyword function, the name of the function is my function, and within the parentheses of that definition, I've declared a variable called myArg. That variable, myArg, will be accessible to the code within the function code block. If I wanted to pass multiple arguments, then I would just list them, separate them by commas. Then those arguments by those names are available within the my function code block. A call to a function that requires arguments obviously requires that the caller pass values into the function call. When those values are passed in, they are assigned in the same order that they appear within the parentheses. They are assigned to the variables that we defined in the function definition. So in this example, the string 1 will be assigned to arg1. The integer 2 will be assigned to arg2, and the string 3 will be assigned to arg3. Those names, those variable names, are how we, within our function code block, can access that data and act upon it. Now, just to be clear and technically correct, when we define a function and list variables that the function expects when it's called, those variables are referred to as parameters. When a call is made to a function and values are passed into that call, those are referred to as arguments. Over the years, these two terms have become somewhat synonymous, but to be technically correct, you should know the difference between the definition of a parameter and that of an argument. Now we have a function that's going to take values and act upon those values, and presumably the function is going to do something interesting with that data and return something to the caller so that we can continue to execute our code in the application. When we want a function to return some data to the caller, we use a new keyword. The new keyword is return. Return something. Return this to the caller. Now, the caller may choose to ignore the data that's being returned. If a function call is on the right side of an assignment operator, then whatever data is returned by that function will be assigned to the variable on the left side of the assignment operator. If you call a function and it is not to the right of an assignment operator, then that value that's returned is just dropped on the floor. It has no life outside of the function. So to get data back from a function, we as the caller must catch that data with an assignment operator. A function allows us to encapsulate a group of PHP statements, a collection of statements that generally do one thing, some specific task. The function may require some values in order to do that task, and when it's done the task, it may return some value to the caller. When we call a function, we cause it to be executed. When we include a function on our web page, it doesn't, unlike the rest of our PHP code, automatically execute when the page is loaded. The function is only executed when it is called by another piece of PHP code. The beauty of a function is that we can write a function that does something. Somebody else can use that function without really understanding how it is that the function does what it does. It just does it, and we call it, it gives us a value back, and we're happy without knowing the details of the implementation within the function. This level of abstraction is very useful for building libraries of functions that provide the ability to do very complex tasks without really understanding how those tasks are being accomplished. So to create a function, we have a new keyword called function. The function keyword is followed by the name of the function and an open and close parentheses. The block of code that defines the function is enclosed within braces. Everything within the braces that follow a function is that code block that belongs to the function that will be executed when the function is called. So someone calls a function, they're the caller. The function may return a value, and when the value is returned, it's returned to the caller. Unlike variables, function names are not case sensitive. So we don't have to worry about case with a function name. But when we do name a function, we should give it a name that reflects what it is that it's doing to make it more intuitive. So let's go look at some code. Here's our first function, a very simple function called hello function world. What this is demonstrating is how to create a function, how to declare it. We'll notice the function keyword. On line 10, the function keyword tells PHP that what we're defining is a function and its name is hello function world. Then notice that on line 10, the function must end in open and close parentheses. This is part of the function syntax, the rules for defining a function. We use the keyword function, we have a name for the function, and then we have the open and close parentheses. Then, to begin the block of code that belongs to the function, we use a brace, an opening brace. Everything inside of the opening brace until the closing brace is the code that will be executed when the function's called. And in this case, it's a very simple function that's just going to print out hello function world and then give us the current value of the internal variable. So we're creating a variable, very simple integer variable, and we're printing its value. The reason for doing this is to show that that value exists within the call to the function, that it has no lasting value outside of the call. As soon as the closing brace is executed by PHP, this internal variable is deleted. It no longer exists. And you'll also notice that I've scaffolded this code. This is a habit that, in my opinion, you should get into. When I execute this, this will tell me that the function's been called. I am inside the function, and it's been called. That's a very useful way to trace the flow of execution of your PHP code. And anytime I want to turn that off, I just set debug to 0, and then this has no effect and will not be printed out. The if statement will fail, and that echo statement will not be printed out. So when I'm debugging, I can trace the flow of execution of the program by setting debug to 1 and then turn it off when I send the code to the testing department or to QA or into production. So then down here, I'm actually calling, on line 21, I'm calling the function hello function world. And again, I'm trying to emphasize here the fact that function names are case insensitive. The upper and lower case characters in a function name do not matter. This is a big difference from variable names where upper and lower case matter and variable names are case sensitive. But notice how we call the function. Within our code, we just give the name of the function and the parentheses, the open-close parentheses. And this identifies for the PHP preprocessor, hey, this is a function call. Go execute the code within the function. Then I call it again on line 23, and then I call it again on line 25. I call it 3 times here to demonstrate the case insensitivity of function names. So let's run this. I'll reload the page, and we'll see that our first call, we get the echo from inside of the statement. Then we get our output from the function, which is hello function world, and this is the value of the internal variable. Well, the internal variable's value is 1. Then we call it again, and again we see that the code is flowing into the function with the call due to the scaffolding that's built into the code. And then again the third call. So there's nothing magic about functions. It's a new keyword, the function keyword, some name, and then the open and close parentheses, followed by the block of code that you want to be executed by that function. And that block of code is like all of the other blocks of code we've looked at for the if, the for each statement. Those blocks of code, including the function code block, is enclosed by opening and closing braces.